Why, hello and welcome everybody. Also, good morning. So today I wanted to go ahead and make the video that I promised for you guys, the low life righteous fire ascendant, kind of like a build guide. Now there's a lot of disclaimers to put, like a lot of disclaimers to put with this character up front. It's going to be a long video. We're going to do our best to jump into it. I haven't played the character in a few weeks, so I may be a little bit rusty. With that being said, let's go. So before I really talk too much about anything, we're going to go ahead and jump into a few bossing showcases. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick feared map. And then after feared, I'm just going to go blitz a T-17. So here is our current invitation for the feared. I will also state that this character is not budget friendly, not new player friendly, not league start friendly. I'd consider this more of like an end game project, or for people who will really enjoy Righteous Fire, this is kind of like an end league project for them, right? Now, one of the main appeals to this character, as you can see, is it actually does not run a single target skill, right? The single target skill of choice is actually your Righteous Fire. You will notice that this character is running Scorching Ray, but the Scorching Ray is not actually for damage. The Scorching Ray is for utility. So when we talk about utility, we are talking about essentially, oh, yoink, 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 thank you very much. We're talking about utility, we're talking about the effective infused channeling, so you take less damage from hits, and we're talking about the exposure that you can get. So minus 30 exposure is typically the highest form of exposure you can usually get without anything crazy, right? So that's kind of where that kicks in. So that's that. The single target's honestly pretty good. Then again, if you spend a mirror on a build, the single target better be good. Half of the budget of this character comes from this amulet. It's very much playable without it. But again, we'll talk more about gearing here in just a little bit. Now we're going to do a quick T-17 map. I don't know what this atlas is on. It's on a strongbox atlas. I don't want to do the entire strongbox setup. It's going to take, 10 minutes to clear the map. So I'm just going to go through and just run so you can get an idea of how mapping feels. Now, one nice thing with this build is I have optimized it intentionally. I say optimized. I also want to say real fast, huge shout out to Captain Lance. Captain Lance, I'll have his channel linked in the description, is actually where I got pretty much most of what I'm doing from. Captain Lance is really nice. He basically set up the progression for this character, had all the POVs fleshed out. And I didn't follow everything, one for one, but you know how experienced players are in PoE. If you see an item, you can typically understand how to craft it, especially in a trade league. So big thanks to him for direction on the character. He actually even helped me craft one of my items here, my helical ring, which was super nice. One of the other things I'll state with the character is that everything I have is self-crafted, even the uniques. That means that they were basically chanced, right? The only thing that I have not crafted was the simplex, because it was really annoying trying to collect the bases, and I didn't really bother with it. You'll also notice that occasionally my ES pool drops a shit ton. The reason the ES pool drops a shit ton is not because the targets hurt me, it's because we press Vol Righteous Fire, and it drains a shit ton of your energy shield. That in conjunction with getting hit can sometimes cause your character to die, so you want to make sure that you're layering your defenses correctly and really know what you're doing, right? Just an example for people who want to see a little bit more. Grab that. When we tap our Vol Righteous Fire here, you'll see that there's this secondary circle that actually breaches off the screen. That's going to be the Vol RF. And then if people are wondering the MTX, because this build is running Herald of Ash, although it's primarily cosmetic, you can pretty much run any Herald effect you'd like. So this is running Despair Herald. Okay, with that being said, since we showed some gameplay, let's go ahead and jump right on in. I will also state that this build is not really, I'd say, risk scarab viable. Just like a typical RF build, there's a lot of mods you don't want to run. T-17 just makes that even worse. So it's an okay bosser. Other builds are going to boss faster. It's a pretty fun mapper. Builds with Mage Blood will probably map faster. Nonetheless, it's a Righteous Fire build, and that's why you're here in the first place, right? Okay, so let's talk about a lot of stuff here. First, I'll talk about leveling, and I'm not going to do a deep dive into leveling because that's a lot of work, right? This is how I leveled the character. So if you'll notice right here, you have a jewel called Unnatural Instinct. It's a little expensive. And over here, instead of Lethal Pride, I would recommend a Light of Meaning with fire damage. By using a Light of Meaning and an Unnatural Instinct, you can simply path like this, or you can path, actually probably through here would be better. I don't really know. Actually, you just path this way. And then once you connect to like Arsonist, just pretend you're an RF Chieftain, right? You're going to level life based. So once you get to Arsonist, you're an RF Chieftain, right? That will take you through the campaign. And then when you get to maps, I quite literally used my Kineticist Merc and I power leveled myself with my Kineticist Merc to about level 90. And then I did the swap to low life. Now, again, if you want more budget POBs, I would go check out Captain Lance. I can't do a stage-by-stage progression as it's just going to take so much time, and unfortunately, people are going to get stuck regardless, so I'm going to talk about everything I have on this character currently. So, let's get started. Okay. I guess we'll start with how things kind of connect. So, this is a blood magic build. Blood magic is meaning that basically you remove all of your mana, and the goal is you're going to stack life. By stacking life, you're going to have a nice life pool, which gives you damage for your Righteous Fire. So currently this character is rocking like 8 million on the RF itself, right? And then we use Ivory Tower. So by reserving auras on our life pool, we are getting Energy Shield. So if you actually look at my Energy Shield right now, if I were to disable auras, you'll notice that the Energy Shield goes down. The reason it goes down is because Ivory Tower wants us to reserve life so that we can then in return get Energy Shield, right? The nice thing about RF is it's going to burn as if you still have the 12,000 life pool. So what that means is even though your life is reserved, the damage still counts for RF, right? So that's really what you want, right? This is how you get a character that can actually scale the RF itself. Now, talking about scaling, how else do we bump up the life pool? This is an attribute stacker. Attribute stackers are unfortunately not cheap and very expensive. Not to mention they have this kind of curve where the reason I don't recommend this build for like, you know, like I said, budget, league start, etc. is if you put, say, 20 divines into this character, it's just a worse RF chieftain. If you put 40 divines into the character, it's just a worse RF chieftain. If you put 100 divines into the character, it's maybe starting to get comparable, but in my eyes, it's a worse RF chieftain, right? Why? RF Chieftain comes with natural explode. It can be tanky very easily. It's life-based, so it's cheaper. It avoids more map mods. It's just a good all-around build. With that being said, once you start getting to the upper targets of your budget, that is when something like this can kind of kick in if you choose to play it. But there's also other variants like Endurance Charge Jug, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. Okay, so now that we got the basis of that, what else can we do with all of this strength? Well, since we're an attribute stacker, we really want to make use of the strength pool. So, some ways we can really lean on this is by using a weapon like this. So, this weapon is giving us, if you read basically one of the last lines, 3% area of effect per 50 strength. What this means is without this weapon, we're playing a normal RF build. With this weapon, we're playing low life Righteous Fire. This weapon is very, very nice. Now, this comes with a cost though. Because you don't have a shield, your recovery is not going to feel as good as an RF Chieftain with like the Shaper life gain on block setup. To fix that, you really want to skyrocket your energy shield up, skyrocket your damage up so you can just kill most things before they surround you. And then this node right here is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is recover 5% of energy shield over 1 second when you take physical damage from a hit. A lot of mobs do physical damage, and this just basically ramps your sustain. Very, very nice. Not to mention, you will occasionally get these huge energy shield spikes from Guardian, which is on the Scion node. Where the heck is Scion? Right over here. Because you're going to get the 50% life over 1 second. So if you look at my defense tab, you'll see that the energy shield skyrockets occasionally, right? So where is it here? Energy shield regeneration from 5k goes to, what is that, 21k? So even though that seems inconsistent, when you have a massive pool like this, it feels very consistent in my eyes, right? Okay, so now that we talked about those mechanics, let's talk about a little bit of how you get the strength, right? So, oh, also, I guess there's a few other pieces real fast. Shaper's Touch is another very nice piece for this build, mandatory, because essentially if you look at Shaper's Touch is going to give you is it the energy shield? Yeah, 1% increased energy shield per 10 strength. This is amazing because when you put this in conjunction with Ivory Tower is giving you flat, Shaper's Touch is giving you percent, right? Flat and percent go hand in hand together. They basically scale with each other, right? A lot of key pieces that go together in the character, right? Then one other thing I would say you want to use, I guess there's like two other things, is you still need to get damage, right? Having all this life and all this energy shield is simply giving you your base damage, but where do you actually get your scaling from? That is where you have things like Dune Kubiari, which gives you 1% increased damage per 8 strength. In this setup, we have the Tempering Orb on weapon. Yeah, Tempering Orb on weapon, or Tailoring Orb, which is very expensive. It was like 100 divines to hit this roll. But the point stands is that you get the increased damage for stacking strength, right? Another area you can get this is the Simplex Amulet, although again, this is very expensive. So prior to Simplex Amulet, there's actually a synth implicit on boots. I'm not using them right now, but the synth implicit on boots gives you damage per strength. I think it's 1 per 20, but I could be wrong. It's very good for budget when you don't have all of these sources of increase, such as like the Simplex Amulet, right? Okay, so now that we have that, let's talk about where we get majority of our strength. So majority of our strength comes from basically everything. You'll notice on the skill tree, we have this like orange colored line. This orange line is your split personality pathing. Essentially, split personalities are jewels that come from Delirium, and the further away from the start of your tree, the more attributes they provide for your character. So that is where one of them comes from. Another one comes from cluster jewels. Cluster jewels here are very important for the build. So each cluster jewel has essentially tier 1 strength with an increased effect on it. So each node ends up giving close to about 10 strength, not to mention the all attributes roll, so 15 strength, right? That's one. So you have one section here, along with one section here. You've got the combo of the Lethal Pride, which is giving us currently a lot of strength. Each baby node on the Lethal Pride is providing strength, and on a budget setup, you can go for 2 5% increased strength nodes like this. And then, for example, I have a 20 flat strength over here. Some other locations for strength would be this jewel, which will come in much later into the build. Essentially, you can get 30% strength if you've got the 2 Warlord combo and 6 Elder combo, although that's not budget friendly. So on a budget setup, I would recommend just looking for the Warlord mod, and then you can min-max for the Elder later. For people who are going to ask, this is why you want influenced unique items, specifically because of Bound Destiny. That's why we have dual influence Dune and dual influence Ivory Tower, right? Okay, other places, if we start looking at our gear, a lot of it comes from the gear. So, for example, the belt has 14% increased all attributes. The boots have 10% strength along with the flat strength. This also has the 42 strength implicit with the 63 strength. The helical ring, which is misted, primarily aiming for 2 mods. You can see it has the fat 171 strength roll with the 40% dot multi. Dot multi is very important here because we don't really spend a lot of points on the tree for dot multi, so it is very limited where we pick it up. That is why helical ring is very strong here. Using a Calandra's touch, because they're cheap to mirror it, is very, very strong. Over here on our helmet, which is probably the easiest piece to craft, we've also got the strength roll. And then, of course, the simplex is kind of huge here for the double attribute, since we have the strength and the attributes. Prior to this, I would use an Eyes of the Great Wolf with, like, I think all attributes, and I think it was damage over time multiplier is what I used. And that was honestly very strong up until I got the simplex. So you can see it's loads of flat strength along with loads of percent increased strength to get everything going. Now, let's go ahead and talk about why we pick Scion for this. Now, you could absolutely play other Ascendancies. Truthfully, I went with Captain Lance's suggestion. I didn't really think much else into it. But there is one big thing as to why, well, multiple reasons as to why you want to play this as a Scion. So, number one, this build relies on Coruscating Elixir. Definitely a turnoff for a lot of people. I've had a few deaths to Coruscating Elixir myself. It's not the end of the world. I do believe some farming strats kind of screw you over. Like, I think if you do like Ghosted Exiles, there's an Exile who I think can steal your flask charges. I don't think I've encountered them very often. Simulacrum has mobs steal your flask charges when they hit you. I face tanked that mod. My flask never turned off, so it wasn't really an issue. I do want to state that if you're doing harder content where you don't need to move as much, you can always opt out for a overflowing chalice, and this will help sustain your other flasks. These three will basically always be on. This one is a little bit tricky to sustain, but again, under any normal circumstances, it will never fall off. When you're mapping, it's not going to fall off, right? If you're doing Uber bosses, you just slap on your Quicksilver or the Chalice instead. Now, how do we get that sustain? Well, this comes from Scion. So Scion, I would opt out for the Forbidden Flesh and Flame, so you can grab Pathfinder. Pathfinder is going to give you movement speed during Flask effect. Flask charges gain X amount, so basically 3 charges every 3 seconds. That is what helps you sustain essentially everything. The reason this is also like paramount is because I res cap through my flasks. So you never want to touch any flask mod, so don't click flask mod on Exarch altar. Don't run reduce flask charges, as those are going to really hinder your build's performance, right? If you really want to, you can. Like, I've ran like an 84% reduced flask effect mod, but or flask charges gain. You don't really want to do that though. That's a bit silly, right? As for what else we gain, we get 40 flat strength. We gain the passive point. Passives are always great for attribute stackers. They're very universal. Chieftain, so chance to cover enemies in ash on hit. Very solid. Unaffected by ignite. I don't really think that matters. 10% strength. Very big. On the Guardian side, we get strength and int. And then we get reservation efficiency, which helps us fit in all the auras with blood magic. We get that huge surge of regeneration. And then occasionally, I guess not occasionally, we always actually trigger the attack block and the spell block. I leap slam for mobility, and I frost blink / scorching ray / flammability. So also flammability hits literally the whole screen. So you're always kind of triggering that. That is actually pretty nice when you're playing a build with, I mean, the build doesn't have bad recovery, but it's not like block cap, spell block cap, right? So getting any form of mitigation really feels good when you have a 30,000 energy shield pool, right? Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about the tree pathing here. So I'm gonna explain what everything kind of does on the tree. So right over here, we're using the Bound by Destiny, which is going to make it so all of our gear's influence is very important. That's where we get the 30% attributes from, or 30% strength from. Over here, we've got Unnatural Instinct. You can see all the stuff you get at the bottom. If anyone played like in Wildwood League and stuff, we actually did the combo with Unnatural Instinct here with Light of Meaning. The Light of Meaning here is primarily just for leveling. You want to swap to a Lethal Pride later for your attributes. Over here, we start the pathing for these split personalities. We want to grab Life, as it's, you know, very good for this build. We're going to move across. You can see my first jewel here. This is actually an Adorn. I think 88% is a breakpoint. I could be incorrect on the breakpoint on 88%. We'll talk about Adorn as we get further in. You need to take Eternal Youth, otherwise your Coruscating Elixir will turn off your Righteous Fire because it sets you to 1 HP. So Coruscating Elixir plus Eternal Youth prevents that from happening. Moving down, grabbing the life and the life regen as we go past it. Grabbing Prismatic Skin over here to help us hit our 90 max fire res. I opted out for Corrupted Blood Immune because I didn't want to spend like 100 divines to get it on a unique jewel. Coming across, you don't really need Unwavering Stance because you have so much life, but there are scenarios where you do get stunned, so that's kind of up to the player. Over here, we've got our first Adorn jewel. So again, remember how I said we don't have much dot multi? You really want to prioritize that dot multi, so this is where we go for dot multi and life. Coming down a little bit, we hit our first cluster. On the budget setup, you're probably going to run Chaos Res instead of all attributes. This can help you achieve high Chaos Res, as Chaos Res is kind of mandatory for the build. So that's one thing to take note of. Moving across here, we grab a very important part for sustaining at low life. For players who are going to ask how you sustain ES on the build, it is a little tricky. Essentially, what happens is sustain becomes really difficult at the beginning, as Lance kind of explained this, because your life and your energy shield are kind of even, which means you're draining a lot from both. After a certain point, your energy shield will overtake your life, which is good, because that means you're not still scaling life, you're primarily scaling your energy shield. So instead of it being like a 1-for-1, it's going to be like a 1 and a 0.5 or whatever. I don't really know how to explain that, but basically when you're only scaling 1 versus both, you can get more net regen. So essentially, if you're not sustaining, hit 90 max fire res, get better gear, right? It's one of those tricky things. It's not as simple as RF Chieftain. One of the things I will say that can help with this is using a mercenary with a Shaper's Touch. That grants you 4% life per second. It's very cheap, so this helps massively, I would say, with getting the character off the ground. Moving on a little bit forward, remember, always grab your adjacent life notables. They are very strong. Up here, we've got Utmost Might with the Attribute Wheel. Over here, we've got Blood Magic. Moving forward, I've got Juggernaut. You can take the reduced crit damage passive here. It's pretty good. Speaking of the cluster, I forgot. Here is our Adorn setup. So we're just still running with the Fire Multi and increased life. If you're on a budget setup, I would skip Adorn. It's very expensive. Moving on over here, we've got one Adorn Jewel with max fire res to help us hit the 90 max. 90 max, very, very big. Moving up a little bit more over here, we've got another cluster jewel. You can see this one is also the T1 strength with the increased effect with the all attributes. Very big. Any stray points can always go into the backside of the cluster, which is really nice. Makes leveling feel very impactful. Moving up, we've got the adjacent life again you want to grab. Coming up again, we have a Watcher's Eye. Now, the Watcher's Eye, there's a couple things you can aim for. The easiest thing to start with is getting dot multi while affected by malevolence. When you want to kind of buff that up a little more, you can go for dot multi and chaos res on purity of elements. You just don't ever have enough chaos res in the build unless you're really at, you know, the end game. So chaos res, very annoying to get on attribute stackers. That's really about it. I don't think there's really any other variation you would use unless you're doing something specific with a mercenary. Over here, we've got the mastery we talked about before, which is the recover life per hit, specifically on Fizz. I will state that this has a unique interaction with the helical ring. When you're going for just a double, so when you're trying to, you know, get two positive mods here, if you get a prefix with flat physical to attacks and you get it negative, so mobs have flat physical to attacks against you, there's actually a buff, because it means mobs that potentially didn't deal Fizz before could deal Fizz now. I think it depends on, I don't know if it has to do with conversion or attack or spell. Basically, TLDR, mobs start to do a little bit extra physical when they didn't do physical, which triggers the mastery, which makes sustain so much better. Kind of a really cool thing, because usually I always think of negative mods as negative. This turns a negative into a positive. Moving up here, we've got Purity of Flesh. These nodes are very strong because they're life and ES, so very, very big nodes. An example, remove it, we're at 482, we go down a lot of ES. Very juicy nodes. This is what I was talking about, every level feels impactful. Moving up, Zealot's Oath, kind of mandatory, it's pretty self-explanatory. Without this, you cannot sustain. Moving up, we have our last cluster where I still have Chaos Res here, because to replace this cluster, I would have to replace my boots, and I'd have to replace my belt. And instead of essentially the T1 cold res and the T2 lightning res, I'd have to get double chaos res. And the thing is, with my current setup, I can run either altars for minus res. And you can actually look at that here by looking at the res. We have like 160. So we can actually run the minus res. So it actually works out well for what we're doing. And that's pretty much the character's skill tree. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the flasks. So Coruscating Elixir, mandatory. Without using this, you die. Like that, there's no other way to say it. It actually is nice on RF though, because it's a permanent ruby flask. Also gives you max fire with fire res. It's really not that bad. It's just annoying to press every map one time. Honestly, I would even argue that it's not really a problem when you start the map, because you enter the map and you just press it. The problem is when you take a portal, like say you're you know, collecting too much loot, so you take a portal back and then you come back in and then you forget to press it. That's happened to me and then I died, right? Oriat's End, self-explanatory. You have so much AoE in this build that running a Bismuth Flask in Oriat's End just makes so like total sense. Not to mention, helps you res cap. Not to mention, you have so much generic increased damage from things like Dune Kubiari and the Simplex with 4,000 strength that the explodes are very good. Like very, very good. Over here, I've got a reduced charges on both of them. This one has the bonus Ellie res, and this one has the 3% life regen. Another key thing for sustaining your Righteous Fire on this build. Do not slack on this mod. It's very, very big. And then, of course, the last one is kind of like a swap. So either I go with the Quicksilver or I go with the Chalice. The Chalice is really only important for stupidly long fights, right? Otherwise, Quicksilver kind of handles just fine. If I'm doing like strongbox farming or something where there's a lot of loot being picked up, I typically have the Chalice on anyway, because I'm you know, just standing still picking up loot all the time. That's kind of where we have the swap. Now I'm gonna go ahead and talk about each piece of gear, how I personally crafted it. So here we go, get ready. First piece of gear is the strength stack offhand. All you care about are the suffixes here. So you can see we have the AoE per strength, the strength, and the dot multi. Honestly, there's two ways to do this. There is a heist enchant you can buy. I don't know if I still have the gear. This one. So there's actually this modifier you can buy. by getting this modifier, you can multi-mod without the use of multi-mod, so it becomes a lot easier to craft. You can basically just, I think it was alt roll. You alt roll till you hit, is it alt roll? Chaos spam, that's what it is. You chaos spam till you get a decent strength roll with the damage per strength, and then you can actually just craft fire multi, fire and ignite, and you're done. Right, you're finished. You want to go for this one, which essentially has the higher dot multi roll, and the prefixes aren't finished yet. I could actually work more on the prefixes. This one is recombinating. Have fun. I spent millions of dust. Fuck that. So that's how you get this one. You basically just recombinate for triple suffix. For people who don't know how recombinating works, we kind of use simple math. So if you're looking for a 2-mod item, you take 2 1-mod items and put them together, right? If you're looking for a 3-mod item, you take 2 2-mod items and put them together. So an example would be strength plus AoE and strength plus dot multi. You recombinate, hope for the triple. Most of the time it doesn't happen, but you get reused bases, and you just kind of keep cycling. That's where we have these from. Basically, if you look here, these are like the failed products. Okay, next up, the boots. Most of my gear, honestly, was essence crafted. There are options for like fossil crafts and, again, recombinating, but I preferred essence. It was simple, it was easy to purchase. So in this instance, you can see when I hold alt, it says of the essence. So basically, essence spam until T1 strength, and then after you get the T1 strength, ideally you would do like a suffixes cannot be changed, reforge chaos to get chaos res. Really annoying because there's hunter mods that can brick you. Hunter mods bricking you, such as things like, I think, unaffected by desecrated ground or whatever. So this one was kind of annoying to get chaos res on, so I settled for the lightning res and it worked well. Belt, if I hold alt, you can see of the essence. Quite literally spam the shit out of it until you get your attributes. This is kind of weird. If you look, it says tier 2. It's actually a tier 1 mod on the increased attributes. I don't know why it does that. It's like a weird bug. So make sure you pay attention to that. As for the prefixes, if you get good suffixes, you can do suffixes cannot be changed, reforge life, and then exalt slam. Or you can do, yeah, basically you can keep doing that. You can essentially get a much better modifier here. Instead of mono, I could actually have hunter % max life, so that would make it better, but annoying to get. Shaper's Touch, actually nothing to really say here. Shaper's Touch, I will say that you do need an Enlightened 4 to fit all the auras in. So if you want a cheaper setup, depending on the economy, instead of that implicit for life, look for a +1 gem implicit, buy a level 3 Enlighten, and you can set everything up. The Helical Ring was an absolute nightmare, and I can't explain too much about it other than you basically get Essence of Horror. Sorry, Delirium. Yeah, Delirium. There we go. You Delirium, you spam until you get a T1 strength roll. From there, you basically have to decide like what you need to do to mist it. Honestly, if you have questions about the Helical, Captain Lance will help you a lot more, or people in my chat can help you, because I did this like I said, like 3 weeks ago. I don't remember everything, but the process is essentially Essence of Delirium spam until T1 strength. And then you have to basically weigh the odds on what the bonuses are on misting. So I think in this instance, it was recommended that you get 2 shit mods. So I had like the mana regen, and then I had the physical. You always have to be careful because there are some mods that can brick you. So don't go for like a triple positive if you're on a budget, because say you have like all attributes with strength and you're like, oh, that's really good, and then you missed it. The strength goes positive, the dot multi goes positive, the all attributes goes negative. That's like really bad, right? So be a little careful on Helical Ring. Ask for help with crafting them. They're a bit tricky. Ivory Tower, pretty simple. You essentially buy the Saints Halberg base. You double influence it right away, so that would be with Awakener Orb. And then you want to make sure that, honestly, get high item level, because if you look at the enchant on it, the increased explicit defense modifier, those are actually gated by item level. I fucked up on this Dune Kubiari. We actually spent 100 divines on tempering orbs, only to find out it's item level 68, and you need 69 to get the temper. So let's not talk about that. I made the mistake for you guys. No problem. So over here, pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, you basically come over to the crafting bench, and you're going to type in rarity. Is it rarity? And you just do reroll rarity. I think it was like, I really don't remember, maybe 1500 at 2k. Scour chance for the ivory, and maybe 3k plus for the Dune. I don't fully remember. It is important to note that when you're doing it with the Ivory Tower, you want to imprint while it's magic. And the reason you want to imprint it is because the price of a Doriani's prototype, which is the other Saints Halberg, is way, way cheaper than the price of an Awakener Orb. So if you actually hit the Doriani's prototype, you would rather imprint it back to magic so you keep the dual influence and try to get Ivory Tower again. Maybe people specifically want a dual influence one, in which case you could go look at the economy, but yeah. Over here with the Dune Kubiari, exact same process as the Ivory Tower, but I don't think you need to imprint because I don't think there's any other scepter on Ball Scepter. Remember, if it's a boss drop, you cannot chance a boss drop, so don't worry about that. The Lich's Circlet, super easy. This one, I quite literally just Essence spammed until T2 Intelligence, and then I did Reforged Chaos, got T2 Chaos, and then I hit T2 Life on a Reforged Life, and then I slammed Conk Effect. Now, when I say I slammed Conk Effect, I mean I influenced it last. I didn't influence it at the start because I didn't need any of the modifiers. You could go for a very expensive helm where you do like Essence of Horror for the 30% more Ellie, and then you try to get the Burning, and then try to get the Conk Effect. But I didn't want to put RF in my helmet with Conk Effect because I wanted the glorious AoE. Although if you're trying to hit dot cap, I would go for that. I don't actually know what this character's damage is. I'm going to say maybe like 10 to 13 million. And then when I Vol RF, it's probably 20, 25 million, maybe even dot cap, I'm not sure. But I don't spam Vol RF all the time because I don't like dying. But that's one thing to note. I think that is most of the gear. I think that's actually everything. Again, the Simplex, I didn't purchase, I didn't craft it, I just bought it. The base of the Simplex was, I think when I bought it, it was 500 divines, and the crafted version was 600. So it was an extra 100 divines to not go through the hassle. The reason why I didn't craft this is when you're doing this, you need to like Hinakura Beast Lock, and you need to get a shit ton of bases. The bases were going to take a lot of time and a lot of currency, and I just figured like, I don't really want to do this. It got really annoying, so I just ended up purchasing it, and that was kind of it. As for the jewels, I don't think there's really much else to say other than the clusters. So the jewels for these, you guys know how Adorn jewels work. You alt spam until your mouse breaks, and then you vol it and hope it doesn't brick. Clusters are kind of annoying. I would recommend going with a fractured base. I don't remember the best fractures, to be honest. I don't remember if it's all attributes, strength, or increased effect. Most of mine, I actually self-fractured, meaning when I saw 2 modifiers that were tier 1, I would go for a fracture. I don't know if it's best to wait for 3, but that's personally what I did. Oftentimes, I think twice or maybe once, I actually sold a 35% increased effect fracture because the difference between 25 and 35 for this build is negligible. I don't think it rounds any of the attribute up. I think it only rounds the fire damage up by like 1%, so it's not really important. So basically, you have 2 ways to do this. Number 1, you can reforge Chaos on the bench. Number 2, and this is with Harvest, so we can do Chaos Reforge. Number 2, you can do Reforge Life. I did this for most of mine. I don't know if it's the most cost-efficient way. It's what I ended up doing. You can also literally Chaos spam and alt spam the clusters. I did quite a bit of Chaos spamming and alt spamming as well. I kind of did a little bit of everything because they were really annoying to craft, but a lot of the time you profit craft with these. So what happens is you end up getting similar things for your build, but it's for another build, and you can just sell it, which is kind of cool. I don't know exactly what people want in terms of the clusters, but they sold, so that's kind of what I went with. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the gems on the character. So here we go, breaking down the gems. Also, if someone in the YouTube comments wants to timestamp, that would be phenomenal because I'm going live right after this. So let's talk about the gems. In my Dune, I've got the Scorching Ray Infused Channeling. Remember, this is primarily for proccing the high exposure and for the Infused Channeling buff, so we can tank more stuff. Over here, I've got Frostblink, my preferred movement skill of choice. It just feels really good to use. Over here in the helmet, I've got a level 1 cast 1 damage taken with a Purifying Flame and Combustion setup. So essentially, the Purifying Flame goes up all the time, creates gigantic areas of consecrated ground, so I don't have to use a Rational Doctrine. Doctrine definitely feels more comfy, but this works. And the Combustion is so it can hit the minus fire res. And then the Enduring Cry I manually press from time to time. It's not a super big. Over here, I've got Eternal Blessing with Malevolence, so this is our aura of choice that's free, that comes with blood magic. Over here, I've got Herald of Ash, that makes the giant kaboom explosions. It actually really doesn't do anything else other than kaboom explosions. I don't think it even really helps with clear. It just looks really cool. If you were to use something else here, it's probably Aspect of Spider for more damage. On the boots, I've got Leap Slam, Life Tap, Faster Attacks, and Flammability. So this is where our Curse of Choice comes in our movement skill. Can't shield charge without a shield, so that's why we go with Leap Slam. Over here on the Shaper's Touch, I've got Flesh and Stone, Purity of Elements, Purity of Fire, and Enlighten. Purity of Elements makes everything really comfy, and you need the res anyway, so it works out really well. And then in the actual body armor, we've got Awakened Elemental Focus, Awakened Burning, Awakened Ink AoE, Life Tap, Righteous Fire, and Awakened Swift Affliction. And for common questions, you cannot use Awakened Swift Affliction or Swift Affliction without Life Tap. It's mandatory. To trigger Life Tap, you can use any of the skills of your choice. So Leap Slam will trigger your Life Tap. Actually, I think that's really about it. Leap Slam and Flammability will trigger Life Tap. You don't actually need to Life Tap everything because, remember, you're Blood Magic, so it's going to cast on life anyway. I just like having higher uptime on Life Tap because it just feels better, right? As for your bandits, you want to help a Lyra. You could technically kill all. I think I killed all after I got to the stage where I'm at, so a Lyra at the beginning really helped. Other than that, I think we explained most of the character. I started this character on about 100 to 150 divines on self-crafted gear. I don't have a POB for that. It's just kind of what I got to get started. I think I was like 15k ES, and the build felt okay. I would argue that the build really clicked when I got the Misted Helical plus the Calandras. For me, that was the first like big investment into the character, and it made everything feel really good. The combination of hitting the base strength and the dot multi was huge. If I take off the ring, you can see I lose like 800 strength, not to mention the dot multi, right? So if we look at our RF right now, we're sitting at 8 million. If I take off this ring, we go to 4 million. So yeah, you can see kind of where the base strength and the dot multi really kicks in. That's one of the big things I would say. Again, another big shout out to Captain Lance, because he's the one who put the build together. I pretty much just followed it in its footsteps and then, you know, kind of just did what I wanted with it. I'm pretty sure we ended up with virtually the same character. He's definitely much better when it comes to attribute stacking than me. I haven't really played much attribute stackers, so it was definitely a nice way to kind of segue myself into it. Character felt pretty good. Didn't really feel scuffed for me, like I said. Once I got the Helical, things kind of really like clicked together. I really hope I did not miss anything. I may have missed something, but I want to say we talked about everything. So that is pretty much about it. If I have a quick, let me see, do I have, oh, I have an Uber set. Yeah, let me go, it's not like a real Uber. I just want to show, some tanking because it's pretty fun. So we're just going to go do a quick Uber at Atziri. I was doing this because I was doing feared rotations, and then I learned that bossing actually doesn't really make you much currency, which was kind of weird for me to think because I don't know why I always thought bossing makes like an extreme amount of money. I think it's mainly just early league when people actually desire the boss drops. And then when you get to endgame, it's just pretty much gambling, like very rare Uber drops, right? Like Sublime and I don't know what all the other stuff are that basically drops from the Ubers, so things like that. A lot of other people, I guess, are going to ask, why no Mage Blood? Mage Blood would be a big downgrade for two reasons. Number one, Bound by Destiny would make it tricky. You'd have to have an Influence Mage Blood. Number two, you're running 2 unique flasks, sometimes 3. It's just not the best fit, so a bit unfortunate, but that's kind of the way it goes, right?
A swift end.
Where are we? Now, I'm gonna hope Atziri gets the double flame blast here. I have never died from it, but I've gotten very close to dying from her flame blast, so let's see. Take a storm call, these don't really hurt too much. Alright, Atziri, I need a double flame blast, okay? It's very important. Please double flame blast us. Come on, do it. Do it. No! I need you to do... I'm gonna, like, sit in the corner and see if she does it. Well, I might need endurance charges to tank it. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh, it just feels good. It feels like cheating. I'm not gonna lie. Well, I think that pretty much concludes the vid. So again, thanks everyone so much for getting through. Very long video. If someone is able to timestamp, it would help immensely. I'll go link, like I said, Captain Lance's content in the comment section below. You guys can go check that out. But I'm gonna go get ready to go live. I gotta go start or continue the RF Chieftain in SSF. We restarted in SSF, and we're actually gonna be farming to play another build this league. I'm going to try out Viper Strike of the Mamba, so pretty excited for that. But that's pretty much about it. So take care, have a wonderful time. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you did, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll catch you guys all tomorrow. Take care, everybody.